March 31, 1994. CBS aired the most censored late-night interview in television history. 13 F-bombs. Sexual propositions. A check that may or may not have been used underwear. And Madonna sitting in that chair, absolutely loving every second of David Letterman's panic. The Late Show with David Letterman was the hottest ticket in late-night television in 1994. Letterman had just moved from NBC to CBS, bringing his trademark sarcastic humor and ability to make celebrities uncomfortable. He prided himself on being the guy who could rattle anyone, make them squirm, expose them when they tried too hard. But on March 31, 1994, David Letterman would learn an important lesson. You don't try to embarrass Madonna unless you're prepared for her to absolutely destroy you on live television. The interview had been scheduled for weeks. Madonna was promoting her album Bedtime Stories, which was supposed to be her attempt at a more mature, softer image after the Essex book controversy 2 years earlier. The label wanted her to seem more accessible, more relatable, less shocking. Madonna had other plans. The day of the taping, Madonna arrived at the Ed Sullivan Theater on Broadway, wearing a black suit jacket, ripped fishnets, and an attitude that immediately put Letterman's producers on edge. During the pre-interview meeting, the standard conversation where producers and hosts figure out what topics to cover, Madonna made something very clear. "I'm not here to promote anything gently," she told the producer. "If Dave wants to ask me inappropriate questions, I'm going to give him inappropriate answers. If he wants to play hardball, we're playing hardball." The producer, who'd worked with Letterman for years and had seen him handle every type of celebrity, wasn't worried. Letterman could handle anything. He was the master of the uncomfortable interview. That confidence lasted exactly 3 minutes into the taping. The interview started normally enough. Letterman welcomed Madonna to applause, made some jokes about her various controversies, and Madonna played along with a smile. The audience was excited. This was Madonna. Controversial, unpredictable, always good television. Then Letterman made his first mistake. He started asking pointed questions about her sex life, clearly trying to make her uncomfortable, to get her to blush, or stumble, or show some vulnerability. "So you've been very open about your sexuality," Letterman said with that trademark smirk. "Do you think that's hurt your career? Made people take you less seriously?" Madonna looked at him with an expression that the producers in the control room would later describe as a shark smelling blood. "Why would talking honestly about sex hurt my career?" Madonna replied, "Men talk about sex all the time. You talk about sex on this show constantly. But when a woman does it, suddenly it's a problem." Letterman shifted in his seat. This wasn't going the way these interviews usually went. Celebrities were supposed to get defensive, not turn the question back on him. "I'm just saying," Letterman continued, trying to regain control. "There's a way to be sexual without being so in your face about it." That's when Madonna dropped her first F-bomb. "Oh, so I should fuck quietly?" Madonna said, her voice sweet but her words absolutely deliberate. "Is that what you're saying?" The audience gasped. The CBS censors in the control room frantically hit the 7-second delay button. Letterman's eyes went wide. This was live television. Well, 7 seconds delayed, and Madonna had just said what you absolutely cannot say on network TV. "Madonna," Letterman said, trying to laugh it off. "You can't say that on television." "Why not?" Madonna asked innocently. "You just asked me about sex. I'm talking about sex. What's the problem?" And that's when everyone, Letterman, his producers, the CBS executives watching from New York, realized what was happening. Madonna hadn't come here to be embarrassed. She'd come here to make them uncomfortable. She'd come here to take control of the interview, the show, the entire situation. Over the next 8 minutes, Madonna systematically destroyed every attempt Letterman made to regain control. Every time he tried to move to a safer topic, she steered it back to something provocative. Every time he tried to make a joke at her expense, she made a better one at his. And she kept saying fuck. Not gratuitously, not randomly, but strategically. Every time Letterman tried to suggest that she was being too sexual, too provocative, too much. Each F-bomb was a deliberate punctuation mark in her argument. "You don't get to tell me how to express myself." By the 4th F-word, Letterman was visibly flustered. "Madonna, seriously, you have to stop. CBS is going to cancel my show. You're going to get me fired. Then maybe you should stop asking me questions about my sex life, Madonna replied sweetly. The audience was in chaos, half laughing, half gasping, all completely riveted. This wasn't just an interview anymore, this was a battle, and Madonna was winning. Then came the moment that would become legendary in television history. Madonna reached into her jacket pocket and pulled out a folded piece of paper. A check. She handed it to Letterman. Here, she said. I brought you a present. Letterman, grateful for anything that might change the subject, took the check and looked at it. His face went through several expressions in rapid succession: confusion, realization, horror, and something that might have been impressed admiration. This is Madonna? I can't read this on television, he said. Why not? It's just a check, Madonna said, that innocent tone back in her voice. Letterman held up the check, carefully keeping it angled so the cameras couldn't see what it said. The audience was going crazy, trying to see what was written on it. It says, Letterman started, then stopped. Madonna, did you? Is this? Smell it, Madonna said. The audience erupted. Letterman looked at the check, looked at Madonna, looked back at the check. I'm not smelling this, Letterman said. Why not? Are you afraid? Madonna challenged. And here's where you see the genius of what Madonna was doing. She'd backed Letterman into a corner. If he smelled the check, he was playing her game. If he refused, he looked scared, like he'd lost control. Either way, she won. Letterman, to his credit, knew he'd been beaten. He gave the check a tentative sniff. The audience screamed, and Madonna sat back in her chair with a satisfied smile. For years, there was speculation about what that check said and whether Madonna had actually done what she implied. In later interviews, Madonna never confirmed or denied it, keeping the mystery alive. The check itself became one of those legendary late-night moments that people still talk about 30 years later. But the interview wasn't over. If anything, the check moment emboldened Madonna to push even further. When Letterman tried to move on to talking about her music, Madonna steered the conversation back to sex. When he mentioned her acting career, she made jokes about the sexual tension between them. At one point, she suggested they go out after the show, and when Letterman deflected, she asked why he was being so uptight. You know what your problem is, Dave? Madonna said. You're uncomfortable with female sexuality. You make jokes about sex all the time, but when a woman actually owns her sexuality and talks about it directly, you freak out. It was a genuinely insightful observation delivered in the middle of what seemed like chaos. Madonna wasn't just being provocative for shock value. She was making a point about double standards, about how society treats female sexuality differently than male sexuality. Letterman, who prided himself on being progressive and edgy, didn't have a good response. We have standards and practices, he said weakly. Standards and practices? Madonna laughed. You have a segment called Stupid Pet Tricks and you're worried about standards? By the time the interview ended, after a full segment, and then Madonna refusing to leave, forcing Letterman to do his next segment, with her still sitting there. Letterman looked exhausted. Madonna looked triumphant. As she finally left the stage, she kissed Letterman on the cheek and whispered something that the microphones didn't pick up. Letterman later said she told him, "That was fun. We should do it again sometime." The aftermath was immediate and intense. CBS received thousands of complaints from viewers who were outraged by Madonna's language and behavior. The episode became the most censored in late show history. The network had to bleep out 13 F words, several sexual references, and strategically edit around the check moment. But the ratings were through the roof. The episode became one of the most watched late show episodes ever. VHS recordings of the uncensored version, bootlegged from satellite feeds before CBS could censor them, became hot commodities, trading hands for ridiculous prices. Media coverage was split. Conservative commentators condemned Madonna as vulgar and classless. Progressive critics praised her for exposing the double standard around male versus female sexuality. Entertainment reporters couldn't stop analyzing every moment of the interview. And Madonna? She was delighted. Once again, controversy had worked in her favor. Head-Time Stories album sales spiked. She was back in every conversation, dominating every news cycle. But the most interesting part of the story is what happened years later. In 2009, 15 years after the infamous interview, David Letterman did something unprecedented. He had Madonna back on the show, and before they even started the interview, he did something he rarely did. He apologized. "I want to say something before we start," Letterman said, his usual sarcastic tone replaced with something more genuine. "When you were on the show in 1994, I was kind of a jerk. I asked you inappropriate questions trying to make you uncomfortable, and you responded by making me very uncomfortable, which I deserved." Madonna, who had come prepared for another battle, was visibly surprised. "I've thought about that interview a lot over the years," Letterman continued, "and I realized that I was doing exactly what you said I was doing, treating your sexuality different than I would treat a male guest's sexuality. And that was wrong. So I'm sorry." The audience applauded. Madonna, for perhaps the first time in her public life, seemed genuinely caught off guard. "Thank you," she said simply. "That means a lot." The 2009 interview was cordial, friendly even. They talked about her music, her kids, her tour. Letterman didn't try to embarrass her, and Madonna didn't need to destroy him. It was in its own way more revolutionary than the 1994 chaos. It was two people having an actual conversation built on mutual respect. But Madonna couldn't resist one callback. Near the end of the interview, she reached into her pocket and pulled out another check. Letterman's eyes went wide. "Madonna, no. Relax." Madonna laughed. "This one's clean, probably." The audience roared, and Letterman actually laughed. A real laugh, not his practice TV laugh. The 1994 Letterman interview has become one of those cultural touchstone moments that defines an era. It represents a time when live television could still genuinely shock people, when stars could go off script and create real chaos, when the line between entertainment and provocation was constantly being redrawn. But more than that, it represents Madonna's fundamental understanding of power and control. Letterman thought he had the power because it was his show, his stage, his rules. Madonna understood something he didn't. The person willing to be most uncomfortable always has the most power. Letterman tried to embarrass Madonna by asking sexual questions. Madonna responded by being so openly sexual that she embarrassed him instead. He tried to use shock as a weapon. She showed him that she was more willing to shock than he could ever be. The lesson wasn't about being vulgar or provocative for its own sake. The lesson was about refusing to accept someone else's rules for how you should behave, what you should say, what boundaries you should respect. Madonna walked onto that show knowing Letterman would try to make her uncomfortable, and she made a decision. "I'm going to be so comfortable with myself that I make everyone else uncomfortable instead." It's the same strategy she'd used her entire career. When society said women shouldn't be sexual, she was hypersexual. When critics said she'd gone too far with the SX book, she went further on live television. When late-night hosts tried to embarrass her, she embarrassed them back. The 13 F-bombs weren't accidents. The check wasn't a random impulse. Madonna came to that show with a plan: show the world that no one could control her, not even on their own show, on their own stage, by their own rules. And 30 years later, that episode is still being talked about, still being analyzed, still being remembered as the night Madonna said fuck 13 times on live television and won. If this story of power, control, and refusing to be embarrassed inspired you, hit that subscribe button and smash the like. Drop a comment about the most outrageous thing you've ever seen on live TV, and ring that notification bell. We've got more incredible Madonna stories about the time she refused to play by anyone's rules but her own.